We have all been there. That moment in a checkout line or at the dinner table where things just explode. It's loud, it's intense, and it always seems to be about something so small, but it feels like the end of the world.
But what if I told you that entire meltdown has absolutely nothing to do with the manager or the late pizza? What if it's actually a primal distress signal from a brain that feels like it's in very real danger? Well, that's exactly what we're going to break down. In this explainer, we're going to unlock a kind of cheat code for human conflict. We're going to dive into the psychological machinery behind our arguments so you can see what's really going on under the surface and know exactly how to handle it.
So here's our game plan. First, we'll uncover the real reason we fight. Then I'll give you a diagnostic tool called the ego triangle. From there, we'll get into a practical de-escalation playbook, cover 10 critical rules of what not to do, and finally, we'll get to the master level, how to win a conflict before it even begins.
Okay, first up, why do we really fight? You have to get this one core idea. The subject of the argument, the pizza, the keys, whatever it is almost never the real issue. It's just the trigger. The real culprit here is something called ego danger. You see, every single time someone has a meltdown or gets manipulative or just blows up, their brain isn't responding to a logical problem. Not at all. It's reacting to a perceived threat to its very survival. At that moment, their logic has completely gone out the window and their ego is basically screaming for its life.
So how do we get a handle on this ego danger? We need a tool, and that brings us to what I call the ego triangle. It's a super simple model that breaks down the 3 core threats that make all of us lash out, manipulate, or sometimes just shut down completely.
The first corner of the triangle is identity. This is our internal story. It's our self-concept. It's who we believe we are and how we think we should be seen by others. When this is threatened, a person's brain will do anything to protect it, because to the ego, losing your identity feels like death.
The second corner is control. This is that deep, primal need we all have for agency, the feeling that we can influence what happens next and that we aren't helpless. The second someone feels like their ability to direct a situation is slipping away, their brain just panics and they lash out to try and grab the steering wheel back.
And the final corner is safety. Now listen, this is not just about physical safety. We're talking about social safety. It's about our status, our rank, our place in the tribe. When someone feels like they've been made to look small or foolish, their ego sees that as a threat to their position in the group, and it triggers a raw survival response.
Okay, theory is great, but how do we actually use this stuff? Well, this next part is all about diagnosing the threat in real time. And here's the secret. You have to stop listening to what they're yelling about and start listening for the hidden language that tells you why they're so upset.
Let's break it down. When someone's identity is under attack, their internal monologue is screaming, "This is not who I am." And what you might hear out loud is something like, "You don't know who you're talking to." If it's a control threat, they're thinking, "Don't tell me what to do," which often comes out as, "You're not listening to me." And for a safety threat, they're feeling small and disrespected, so you might get that sarcastic jab like, "Must be nice."
And this brings us to the playbook. This is where we learn how to de-escalate any situation. The key is to target the hidden threat, not the loud, distracting behavior. Once you know which part of the ego triangle is flashing red, you can use a specific verbal countermeasure to neutralize it.
So let's say you've diagnosed an identity threat. Someone's getting really defensive, maybe they're trying to paint themselves as the good guy or the victim. Your gut instinct is to argue the facts, but don't. Instead, try this. You see what this does? You reflect their desired self-image back at them. This phrase validates their identity. It tells their panicked brain, "I see you the way you want to be seen." Instantly, the threat dissolves because you're no longer attacking them. You're just talking about a situation.
Okay, so what about a control threat? This is the person who's talking over you, they're demanding to be heard, desperately trying to get their hands back on the wheel. The absolute worst thing you can do here is try to overpower them.
The cheat code here is to just hand control back to them. This phrase is magic. It stops the fight, it signals you're on the same team, and most importantly, it gives them that feeling of agency their brain is screaming for. And finally, we have the safety threat. This one can be tricky because it often shows up as sarcasm or passive aggression. This is someone who feels their status has been attacked, and they feel insecure and small. Your job here is to restore their sense of social security. You do it in 2 parts. First, you validate their reaction. That's a fair response. And then you align with them. We're on the same side. This tells their brain they aren't being cast out. They're safe.
All right, so we've talked offense, now let's talk
defense. This is all about frame control. Now think of a frame as the unspoken context of a conversation. It defines what you're really talking about and who has the power. If you lose control of the frame, you're suddenly playing their game by their rules, and you're going to lose.
So here are the things you should never do. Number 1, never explain yourself under pressure. It puts you on the defensive and gives them all the power. And a huge one, never argue about your motives or take the bait when they question your character. The second you do, you're letting them define who you are. And of course, never match their emotional intensity. That's a complete surrender of your own frame.
And the list goes on. Never accept vague, loaded language. If they say you were disrespectful, make them define exactly what they mean. And this one is critical. Never, ever argue that their feelings are wrong. Their feelings are real to them, and arguing about them is a direct attack on their reality. And finally, don't try to play therapist and fix the person in the middle of a fight. It's just not going to work.
This brings us to the final, most advanced skill. This is about how to win before you even start. You see, most conflicts don't start with a first angry word. They're actually decided in the first 30 seconds, in that awkward space where the rules of engagement haven't been set. This is where you use a technique called pre-framing.
Here's exactly how it works. You start by reinforcing their positive identity. You've always struck me as someone who's really fair. Then you define the frame for the conversation. My goal here isn't to blame anyone. After that, you align the sides, set clear boundaries, and finally, you give them ownership of the outcome. By doing this, you've systematically disarmed every single ego threat before the difficult conversation even begins.
So I'll just leave you with this question to really think about. In your life, in your work, in your relationships, have you won more arguments than you've solved problems? Because at the end of the day, the goal isn't to win the fight. It's to see the threat, dissolve the danger, and actually solve the problem. Together.